Hello and welcome back to Indie Book Talk. Today we have a very interesting guest. One of those people that I connected with on Twitter and was like, no, you need to be on our show. Um, L.A. Cunningham, otherwise known as Laurie Cunningham, author of Sister Grimm and Babies with Rabies. She's also the editor in chief of ASAP Imagination. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, so that intro, I feel like everybody's going, what? Tell us about babies with rabies.
um, so, Babies with Rabies is an inappropriate parenting picture book. I'm not sure what your policy on swearing is, so I'll keep it.
Knock yourself out. It's
KK.
okay.
So, because I was gonna do the comps, so it's essentially kind of like Go the Fuck to Sleep, and K is for Knife Ball. So it's kind of along those lines. Like it's not for kids, but mine actually doesn't have the inappropriate language. It just, I think the worst word is ass, and I think it has sex in it. So that's really all there is. So I guess like kids could read it, but yeah, it's essentially just like a rhyming. It's an ABC survival guide, so it has like this like little rhyming inappropriate kind of parenting advice for new parents, or people have actually told me it's for parents and for people who hate kids. So you get the two extremes, and then everyone in between, I'm sure. So yeah, I was at a con one time and someone was reading this and she's like, I love this, I hate babies. I'm like, oh, I guess that's another like target audience of the book, I suppose. So sure. But yeah, and it's kind of like, I kind of describe it as like Shaun of the Dead meets Mad Max, but with babies. So it's kind of like dystopian and zombie-esque, and but there's kind of like the little gangs and hordes of babies, and it's like very survival of the fittest. So yeah, it's quirky.
It is correct. Why? What beautiful turns of brain led to babies with rabies?
I think, like, honestly, most of my stuff I feel that I do that's like weird. I feel is like it's basically a joke that kind of just got out of control. Like, I think I was just sitting around with my parents and we were just like, I think my daughter, when she was about 6 months, she was teething and stuff. And I honestly don't know how it started, but we just started um, talking about the concept. And then you like make a little rhyme, and then all of a sudden you have your first rhyme, and you're like, and my mom always does a thing where she's like, that should be a book idea. And then not all of the things we talk about should be a book idea, but she's kind of, I feel like it's comedians are like, oh, that'd make a great joke. And you're kind of like, maybe. Like you just kind of humor people a bit. So like, but like this is one of those instances where I'm just like, that is kind of funny. That might make a good book. And then like you kind of think up of a couple letters, and then suddenly you have momentum, and like this was a whole alphabet, and once you have like 10 letters, you're like, oh well, I just need like 16 more letters, and suddenly you have a book. And and then it is like you just, and it wasn't something that I was like really actively writing, but I think randomly like I did do all my thinking when I'm writing when I'm driving, it seems. So like I was doing a lot of commuting back and forth, like so my parents a bit of a ways away and were helping with babysitting. So it's kind of just like, oh, I thought of another letter. That's kind of funny. And then hopefully I remember that before by the time I get to my destination. So just texting it. But yeah, so yeah, just kind of went from there. And then again, it kind of just sat, and I tried to do the traditional, like I queried it because I'm like, because there are books like that, like not like this, but like similar. Like there's the inappropriate parenting books, and they exist, and they are like published by real publishers, and I assume represented by people, and like they've gotten like Go the Fuck to Sleep got huge and stuff. So I'm like, well, maybe there's like a market for this, and I think that it's really hard to find agents who are like, I'm looking for this. Like, there's lots of kidlit books, and there's lots of graphic novels, and there's lots of people who are looking for like dystopian sci-fi weird kind of books like that. And then there's people who are looking for parenting books, but like to find like that weird little like Venn diagram of people looking for this weird book almost is non-existent. So I like tapped out the list of agents who are, I'm kind of like, maybe like pretty quick. So and then it was kind of just like, well, like maybe this, it just kind of sat there for a while, but then things, once they're on the back burner, they just kind of like percolate a little bit, right? And then you're like, do a little bit more and a little bit more, and then suddenly you are paying an artist and publishing a book,
I
making
just want to see
stickers.
what
And
it would look like. I'm not saying I'm
yeah,
gonna make
yeah, it just kind
that.
of goes out of control. Like I don't know, like I recently did that where I have like a short story that I want to turn into a novella at least, and it's like again, it's kind of kooky idea, and I just randomly DM'd an artist, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I am paying for a cover, and I'm like, I don't even have this book finished. I'm just like, but like, what would it look like? This could be fun. Maybe seeing a cover will motivate me to write the rest of the story. So I don't even know if I'm gonna like do it traditionally. I was just like, maybe it should be on like Wattpad or Patreon or, but I don't know. Just make reckless bad decisions as an indie writer of money. Who needs that? So
I really
yes.
just like that you seem to be accidentally writing books. You're just like, well, I mean, I didn't mean to write a book, but I had this idea, and then I had another idea. Next thing I knew, there were charges on my credit card for covers. I
Oh
don't
my
know.
god. Oh my god, I'm worried that you've like pointed that out because I feel like that's exactly how I've written like everything. That's a thing. It's like even like I like have my comic books, and like how I wrote my first comic was same thing where someone like Hades is like my partner in crime at ASAP Imagination, and he's just like, you should write a comic book, because it was just a short story at the start that was supposed to be like a one-off thing, and then all of a sudden he's like, you should write a comic book, and I was like, no, I shouldn't. And then suddenly I'm like fully in there, like editor-in-chief, like how I think I have 4 comics out now, and I'm just like, I guess I'm a comic book writer too. So yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay, okay,
Looking back on my
let me back
path.
you up. Where did this journey start? Because, like, what was the first publishing thing that you did?
Like in the whole writing world, like
Yeah, like
where I'm like, I'm
how
going to
did
do
you
this.
get on this crazy roller coaster ride of randomly accidentally publishing things?
um so yeah, everything will sound coincidental again, because I wasn't one of those people that like when I was like 5 years old I'm like, I want to be a writer and have been writing stories all my life. Basically I had this kind of opportunity to go overseas, and I decided to just start a travel blog to kind of connect with people back home, because it was like a 5-6 month kind of thing. It's like a decent amount. And when I came back, people were like, oh, I loved your blog, like you're a really good writer. And then that was kind of, I think, a bit, that was maybe the first seed that got planted. And then kind of that trip kind of, I came back to, I was doing accounting at the time and working in oil and gas, like very 9 to 5 office job, and put on the grown up clothes and go to my pretend that I'm important and stuff. And yeah, I think I wasn't loving it. And then my partner, he was just like, well, what if you took some writing classes just for fun? And then I started doing that. And then it says a continuing ed, so it's not like you don't like, you get a certificate at the end, and I never actually completed it. But like you but you like eventually, I'm literally like 1 course away, but by then I'm sure the curriculum's changed now and I have to take more courses. But it was literally like yeah, I like just take random courses. You have to meet a certain number, so I just took ones that were interesting, and one of them was called publishing and promoting your book. And again, I was very much just doing this for fun, like not really anything seriously. But one of the assignments was to join Twitter, and I by that, like, I'm such a late adopter on social media, like, but by the time I joined Facebook, it was just like, oh, like your entire high school has accept, like there's just like that list of people who are like, they're like, yay, we're friends. I'm like, I didn't have to do any work or whatever. So and this is the same thing. I was like kicking and screaming joining Twitter. I'm like, oh, fine, this is like, I guess it's assignment. And so once you kind of join Twitter and like start an author platform and start telling people you're a writer, it's kind of like, maybe I should like write something. Like you kind of have that bit of accountability. So I think that I like started doing that. And then I think around then I was like, I think something about that kind of switched my mindset, and you start connecting with people who are doing stuff and you're like, oh, this is fun, and learn stuff, learn all the weird lingo and acronyms and stuff. And then I think I'd read a couple books where I'm like, oh, this would be like, where you kind of get you like your first novel idea. And that's when I'm like, well, I want to write a novel. And of course, I don't know if everyone comes into writing like that, but like you want to be the novelist and the New York Times bestseller and like live off of your royalties in a castle somewhere. I don't know. this like big thing that just never happens to like 99.99% of people. But yeah, I think that there's kind of like this like big lofty dream, and then once you start kind of doing it, I kind of realized novels weren't really for me. I'm like really good at writing like the first 12,000 words, and then I kind of like, now what? What happens in the middle of this? So I kind of switched to short stories for a while, and then I was started off writing dark fantasy, and then I kind of like found the horror community, and I don't know, the horror people just seem to have like this good like dark humor that like matches my dark humor, and so I kind of like drifted a little more horror-esque a little bit. And one of the guys I'd met, he was doing a podcast, or I guess it's a podcast, but basically you could submit stories and they would read them online and like do all the sound effects and stuff. And I kept writing stories, and there was like a whole bunch of criteria you had to meet. Whereas like it had to be like, I think it had to be first person. I think the main character had to die, and like there's a few things. And I kept being like, well, the story needs to be like third person, and like, but the secondary character, it makes more sense if they die and stuff. So I kept just like having all these weird like short horror stories, and then but then I was like fully writing horror, and then I met Hades just like randomly. I think we were joking about making friends as an adult, and like just handcuffing yourself to people and just being like, we're friends now. Whereas like when you're a kid, you're like, we have the same lunchbox. Yes, this is, everyone wonders how you're supposed to make friends as an adult. Handcuffs.
Handcuffs. Okay,
invade personal space.
Pro tip.
Pro tip for everybody. Just, we're friends now. Just gotta saw your arm off otherwise. Do you really not want to be friends that bad? You want to saw off your own arm? But
These are your choices.
Yeah, it's a weird choice, but how insulting would that be? Someone's just like, no, get me out of here.
They're like chewing on their arm.
Yeah, just chewing it off. Oh, insulting my self-confidence. Why doesn't anyone like me? But yeah, so that's how Hades and I met. And he's kind of like, hey, like maybe we should do a project together. And again, he was working the 9 to 5, and I think then I had been laid off from my 9 to 5, and I was about 4 months pregnant or something. And so we were kind of just like, I don't know, I was like sick, and like I'm like, I don't want to do anything. But basically we're kind of just like chatting back and forth and not really committing to anything. And then I had my daughter, and then I was still trying to write, and it wasn't really working because like I was exhausted and postpartum depression, and like I'm just like, I have a human to look after, and I have no qualifications other than I birthed this human. That's the only qualification. But yeah, and then it was like, I think eventually he's just like, well, what if we like do that project? And we'd already kind of talked about doing this anthology where it was like based on an event, and there'd be a whole bunch of different perspectives of people talking about this one event, so different stories. And he's like, well, in my comic book universe, which he was trying to get, like, originally he was just trying to publish comics like traditionally, like submit it to like Dark Horse, I know, was one of them he submitted to. And then he hadn't heard anything back, and he's like, I'm just gonna like start my own comic book company. And he's like, do you want to like work on this project together? And so it's a prose anthology, and it's basically, he's like, yeah, this like event, so we can just write it in there. And the same thing, like at the start of the phone call, I was like, absolutely not, I have no interest in that. So like, I'm overwhelmed, I like got no time for this. And by the end of the phone call, I was like, all right, I have my first idea. I have my first story. Here's how this is gonna go. And I'm like, started writing it, and then eventually I was like slowly pecking away at it, and he finally was just like, what if we just like pick a release date? And it was like super close, and I was like panicked about it. And then we like managed to get it out there. But during, like, we each wrote 8 stories and then kind of like meshed them together based on this like timeline around the event. And there was a couple things that weren't working out, so I had to like delete half of one of my stories. And when he like rewrote the ending, it was like, hey, he was like, this is a comic book character. And same thing, I'm just like, neat. Like, what does that mean to me? He's just like, well, you should write a comic book. And I, again, didn't want to. I'm like, that, like, it wasn't on my radar even a little bit. I'm just like, no, I'm just like on the sidelines, like being like, rah, rah, you can do it. And then and then I think again, kind of the seed was planted, and I was just like, so how hypothetically, like how would I do this? And I'd read some of his scripts and stuff, so I'd like seen how to write comics, and he's like, well, you can try doing that, like following this like format. And so I started like coming up, trying to follow the format, and it was like just a total like garbage process. I mean, this isn't working for me even a little bit. I'm like, I'm just gonna puke out the story. And originally it was gonna be a graphic novel, and so I like got him like puked out this whole story. And oddly, it was arguably like kind of like novel length since it's supposed to be a graphic novel, but like really like choppy and outliney, like not written in length at all and like in detail since it's comics. And then yeah, since then we decided to cut it down into like 4 issues. So I've been like kind of hacking away parts where I'm like, well, we can save that for like another story arc, I guess. And then trying to put it in a format. And then same thing last year. I'm just like, finally had a comic book out. We found an artist and it was like ready to go. And so I put it out there. And that is it.
And this is it. Those of you who are watching rather than listening, this is it. Sister Grimm. I have it. Very
Which is
exciting.
cool.
And it's shiny, and I love the color palette. I don't want to like give anything away, so I'm going to keep it way over here. But, like, the color palette's really pretty. I have to say, I find your journey hilarious because I feel like you're simultaneously the world's most impressionable author, but also like wildly creative because you're like, oh no, I don't want to. Well, here's an idea.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's basically like I am like the power of suggestion. Like the fact that like, and there's still a part of me where I'm like, no, New York Times best-selling novelist. I'm just like, but I'm like way over here now. Like, what?
Do you know how much I would pay to see Babies with Rabies on the New York Times? Can we do that? Like, how many books do we?
I so like I right now I only sell it through my website, and I like, and because of that, because again, it was like Amazon just causes problems because like I had this like vision for it where I wanted this like little hard cup. Like I have all this stuff here too. So like again,
Yeah,
people who
show
can
me.
see. So
People
like
can
here
see,
and
check
it's
out
like
that
little
cover.
like square thing, and at the time Amazon couldn't do it because they wouldn't do hardcovers. And I went through Ingram Spark and tried to do it, and they did hardcovers, but not in the size I was looking for. So I was just like, I guess I print it myself, and it's like I'm just like, so I have to set up my own store. And my artist, actually, I really lucked out with him for Babies with Rabies. He's over in Japan, but he's from Spain and speaks like 20 different languages and stuff. But he's been in this for 15 years. And he was just like, oh, well, you can do this and this. And I have some printers over here that like might be a little cheaper than like in Canada and stuff. So he like really hooked me up there. And but yeah, so it's on my website right now, but it's just like, so I had to pre-order them all. And it's like,
Mm.
he's just like, well, you have to do a minimum order. I'm like, well, what's like the minimum order? And he's like, 1,000. And it's like, and I like was living in a small house. Actually, I was living with my parents when I first like started this whole thing because we were renovating and trying to sell our old small house, and then we moved into like a new smallish house but slightly bigger. I'm like, I don't even know what 1,000 books looks like. And he's just like, well, I typically order like 3,500, 4,000. I'm just like, let's keep it like 1,000. I don't want to be one of those people, same thing, where I'm just like 20 years from now I'm like, I got like 4,000 books that I never sold. And then even now I'm just like, I got like 1,000 books.
You walk
Does
into
anyone
the
want
house
one?
and all the bookshelves are filled with the same book.
Yeah, basically. I used to have a TBR, but I didn't have room for them. So all my furniture is like, like university, it's all just cinder blocks. Like my house is just like just forts. Just big forts of that.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what I'm talking about. This went on a huge tangent, but
No, I
anyways,
love
it's
it.
on my
I
website.
don't
In
think
summary
we've
of
ever
whatever I
talked.
was talking about.
Yeah, in summary, it's on her website. I don't think we've ever talked to anyone who's done that kind of bulk order, because it's a huge money commitment, it's a space commitment, and then you have to ship all the stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a huge thing. So go support this wonderful, insane, creative human. What is your website? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
So it's lacunningham.com is like my main website. And that's where Babies with Rabies is because it's outside of ASAP. And then the comic books are at asapimagination.com. And there's also the anthology as well, because same thing, like none of this stuff's on Amazon, because same thing, we started on Amazon and Amazon was being weird. Like it wouldn't print this because it was a flip book. This is the
Oh,
original
that's cool.
anthology. So half of it's upside down, which because of that, they wouldn't print it. They're like, well,
Right.
quality control, people will complain about it being upside down. And we're like, well, that's how it's supposed to be.
That's the gag,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. So we are like, oh, should we compromise our vision? And we are like, screw it, just do it ourselves again. So yeah, so ASAP Imagination is where the other stuff is right now. And like Babies with Babies, maybe I'll put it on Amazon if none of these move.
Well, you've got all
If I start
those.
to,
You could direct what is that called? When you're the fulfillment, right? You could
yeah,
still
yeah,
list it
you
if
could
you
be like a
wanted to.
third party seller on there,
Yeah.
so not like the
And like I've
KDP like
just planted
Amazon.
that
So
seed. So now you're gonna do
well,
it.
I'm aware. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I'm getting to the point where I'm like, Minis, I need to move some of these a little bit more. It's a little, got a little bit of stock here. I also have like stickers and like, because I also made like a kit, so like for like a new parent gift. So like it comes with like there's like stickers and magnets and a bookmark, and then there's like I got some specially designed like ninja stars for the bathtub, and then it comes with teething rings, of course.
Of course.
So, I also got all
That is
that stuff.
spectacularly amazing. I kind of want you to start pitching those journalists who do the lists of like, you know, unconventional gifts to give to new parents and that sort of thing, but also to get these packs placed in like stores, like in retail stores. I feel like you could be in like like the cool quirky retail store that like every town has one. You
Yeah,
could be in
yeah,
all of those and it would be amazing. Um
yeah. I know my second baby just turned 1, and I'm just like the first year I'm just like low, shoot, aim low. I'm like, because I published this while he was like still in that first year, so it was just like it was a busy, and it's, like all these things have come up like within like the last like 6-7 months or so. So I'm just like now I'm kind of like, okay, need to do a little bit more legwork and actually like see where this should go.
well,
Yeah.
I am just in awe and ready to see which crazy thing you fall into next. So everyone go visit lacunningham.com and get Babies with Rabies so that there's less stock in Lori's house.
So I
And
don't get buried alive.
so she doesn't get buried alive. And also check out ASAP Imagination and see the comic books and the anthology and all the other cool stuff they're doing over there. Like I said, I've got one. It's cool. It's shiny. You're gonna like it. Um, thank you so much for being on the show. This was ridiculously fun.
Okay. Thanks for having me.